So I'd like to discuss market data versus private fields. And it's a very important question. And it's a question that's not easy to address. So I'd like to take three angles for it. First, I'd like to see if there's a moral angle to it. Then we'll see if there's an efficiency angle, a maximization problem of some kind. And then we'll take the practical angle at the end. All right, so let's start with the moral angle. And of course, like, I'm not super equipped, and I don't have a very good sense of what is fair. But what's really interesting is what happened to Euronext. So 2 years ago, a Dutch newspaper published an article saying Euronext was favoring HFTs. And the opinion of that article was because private fields were first, HFTs were favored. And that is super interesting. It triggered a huge response. The European Commission, if you believe it, took issue with that. The European Parliament took issue with that. Then asked the European Commission what their opinion on it was. The European Commission turned to the European regulator, ESMA, and then ESMA finally turned to the trading community at large and put a question in a survey that they did. And all the while this was happening, public pressure was building a bit, and Euronext responded in the most rational way, which was, you know, if people really think the fair thing to do is to publish market data first, then we'll do that. Because the thing that's important for us, Euronext, presumably, you know, I wasn't there, but is that the public trust what we do. And in the course of a year and a half from that article, that chain of events unfolded, and eventually Euronext introduced a speed bump on their private fields. I think the whole thing is remarkable. Now, if you look at the efficiency angle, who are the people that want to maximize something? So there are two constituencies, I would say. The exchanges, and presumably the exchange want to maximize revenue. So it sounds a simply stated problem. And the regulators presumably want to maximize investor confidence so that the market function well. If you look at it, and if there were a very simple answer to the maximization problem for the exchanges, you would think that all exchanges would have converged to the same solution. And in truth, today, the exchanges have come to very different solutions to that question. So that tells me that there's no simple answer to that, and that the relationship between revenue maximization and market data first is not a simple one. What about the regulators? So I would say that's an even more difficult maximization problem, because you really can't measure investor confidence with any confidence. But if you go back to the first example, which is the chain of events that unfolded for Euronext, and which led them to introduce the speed bump, I think it's fair to conclude that if you know nothing else, if you impose the fact that market data should be first, then you will probably maximize investor confidence. So if I were a regulator and I was tasked to actually decide, which, you know, it may not be on top of their agenda, but if they wanted to decide, I think they would decide market data first. Now, let's turn to the practicality angle. And what's good is that because of that paper in the Dutch newspaper, ESMA introduced a question and asked a question from the trading community: what do you prefer, market data first or private fields? And there were many, many answers. And I've chosen to group the answers in two groups and discard the others, not because they're not interesting, because they don't exactly are relevant for us today. So first, the prop traders. So if you look at what the prop traders have to say, and those are the firms that responded, of course they had long and cogent and intelligent responses, but my high-level summary of it is, please make market data first, but it's not a super important thing. The really important thing is that you document what you do. And essentially, it's like the prop data is saying, look, it's not the most important decision that you make, but we want to know the rules because we want to play by the rules and we can adapt to any rules that you have as long as you document it well. And that, I think, is a very practical viewpoint on this. If you go then to the exchanges have a slightly different way of doing this. They've all said, yes, market data first, but they didn't really sound super convinced. A little bit of that was probably paying lip service to what the public at large was feeling was fair. But what the exchanges said is, it's not something we really focus on, and please, regulators, don't decide that we should do it one way or another. Please let us live our happy lives. And that's what the exchanges have said. Now, that's almost all the exchanges. There was one that stood out, Deutsche Börse, Eurex. Eurex is extremely focused on making the market data first. But they're a bit of a odd data point. Maybe NASDAQ is in that category, but there aren't that many that fit that category. So I can't resist, but I have to show you an extra response from that survey. So if you go to the next slide, the extra response was from the Swedish Market Association, Securities Association, and they say, no big opinion, but we absolutely don't want exchanges to make more money out of that, which I thought was a very funny and very kind of, in the air kind of sentiment. So why do I discuss this? I discuss this because at McKay Brothers and Quincy Data, I represent both here, we have the same kind of decisions to make, and the decisions made by the exchanges influence what we can do. So if you look at our network today, so what angle do we take? Of course, we take the maximization angle, where we come from science, so we try to maximize things. And what we try to maximize is value to our clients. And value to our clients is essentially we have to make sure that many of our clients win the latency race and that they win it many times. And we think that by doing this, this will maximize our revenue. So it's a fairly simply stated problem, but it's a simpler problem than just saying maximize revenue because you focused it on maximizing a client experience that you can measure. So what do? We have an extensive network now, and the question is being asked on every particular link. So it's a very difficult and broad question. And over the years, when we started 10 years ago, we just had one line between Chicago and New Jersey, and it was simple. We had market data and bandwidth, and we made bandwidth faster just because we couldn't make market data faster. And the reason was that our platform latency for market data was much bigger than the platform latency of signal generation used by our best clients. So we didn't stand a chance. There was no competition there. But if you think of it, how can we make market data faster if we want to? There are essentially three tricks. Either we remove platform latency and we distribute the raw data, or we are very good at platform latency and beat our clients, or we introduce speed bumps. And over the years, we've actually used those three tricks. So if you can go to the next slide, this is a super high-level view. The purple thing is where we make the market data faster. And there's a lot more granularity to it. So if you're interested, come by the booth. We'll discuss that in detail. It's a high-level view of that. But we've used the trick of sending the raw data in New Jersey local, because New Jersey local is a place where we have a lot of very good bandwidth. So we can just send all the data. We have used the trick of being faster on the platform latency than our best clients between Chicago and New Jersey, just because we found a way to do it. And we have used the trick of introducing a speed bump between Chicago and Asia just because we built recently and we recently introduced a product that was many hundreds of miles faster than competition. So we have a lot of leeway to do the speed bump trick. I'm showing this. That's the shameless sales plug, but it's really not. That's not the point. The point is here, one lesson that we took from the survey by ESMA was that you have to be transparent and you have to explain what you do. And the only thing important in this slide is that when we go into client meetings, we have this line which says private bandwidth with a small handicap. And then we explain what the handicap is. And of course, like the key thing when you do that is that you have to explain what the rules of the game are, and so that your client community can play by those rules. So I'm done for talk today, but I have another subject. And oh yeah, very good. So no, it's fine. I wanted to introduce it, but like 3 years ago, my last talk, I gave an overview of HF or transatlantic and transpacific event transport, information transport. And what you do is pretty simple. It's in the market data. You go to, you look at the big trades on S&P 500 at the CME, and you look at the echoes on Eurex, on Eurostoxx and DAX. And if you do that, on the horizontal axis here, you have latency, propagation latency, and on the vertical axis, you have echo count. And you can see that if you look at echo count, there's a natural rate of trading here, and then there's a big hump here. And this corresponds to the best microwave, the best fiber, and then the best microwave. And that was a pretty simple thing. You could discern a few little humps here, and those, I would say, were the premise of HF services. The premise, like they'd been used for a long time, but they weren't that reliable. And you can actually measure the height of those things. And I think that 3 years ago, they were about maybe 5% of the echoes were coming from HF. But if you fast forward to today, and you redo the same thing, so sorry, it's not the same graph. I did it slightly differently. So here is the same horizontal axis. This thing is the same as the cumulative distribution here. So it's the new cumulative distribution. And you can see that the HF portion of that height, has gone up a lot. And it's not the only thing that you can see there. The minimum time of HF propagation of information has also moved down quite a bit. It's moved down from being slightly over 28 milliseconds 3 years ago to slightly over 26 milliseconds today. And in those 3 years, I think the HF people have made a remarkable improvements to their service. And that's transatlantic. But my real interest really is transpacific, because that's the thing that we've just introduced. So if you do the same thing for transpacific, you essentially see the same kind of shape. Let me describe that here. There seems to be some signal over the natural rate of trading coming from here, starting here at 45-ish millisecond. Then there's a big increase here, and then there's a final hump here. But there's a lot more structure to it. So it's interesting. Why do we have those different timescales? That's a question to the audience. Oh yeah, no, you know, but you can't tell. Is that right? Okay, all right, okay. 'Cause you used to tell those things. All right, so so that's an interesting angle to it. Instead of saying CME triggers Nikkei, you're saying something could trigger CME and Nikkei. And that could confuse the picture. That is totally a possibility.
Is that like average over the entire year that you're showing here? Or is that like in a specific moment?
That's a very good other angle. The field is very dynamic. It's actually not. It's just one day. It's one day.
Sometimes the link is up and sometimes it's down.
It could be some things are up and some things are down. One way maybe we should, and if you go to the next slide, if you look at not at the cumulative distribution, but at the echo count directly. So when you look at the echo count, it's kind of hard to see the first here, so the cumulative distribution is better for that. But the echo count, you see like different, well, very well-formed peaks, and you have like 2 peaks here. And when you see this, then maybe it's a little easier to guess.
The variance of speeds of network.
Variance to the network or different networks? Could be both. So, but why is it so different between 45 and like 52-ish? It's milliseconds, like market data versus fills it's more like microseconds kind of thing.
Just a guess, but like sometimes you are able to form an HF link over the Pacific and sometimes you can't. So when you can, you get the sharper, like the low latency. When you can't, you get the
I think you're right. So if you look at the very first ones, and maybe I can give our solution to that, is this, the first count is going CME to Tokyo direct. And that is hard, so it's hard to establish the link very often. So the actual total echo count coming from that is not massive, it's under 5%. Then there are various tricks with going Chicago to Seattle and then taking the fiber Trans-Pacific. And then there's the Go West network, and then there's regular fiber. So you can see there's a lot of structure to that. And of course, I've put in Go West, although that was done in September, so we were up. And it's more as a tribute to Go West, who's dominated this for years. But it really should not be Go West, it should be Go West and McKay, like a combination of us both. And that resolution, it's not easy to see the difference between the two.